I want to welcome you to the Pro Mindset Podcast. The Pro Mindset Podcast is all about diving into the headspace that results in championship performance. High-performing athletes, winners, have this mental flow and have a positive headspace for their performances and success. Join me, Craig Domann, sports attorney and NFL agent, on this podcast. I will interview pro athletes, college athletes, football coaches, and sports personalities. Together, we can discover how you can get in the flow and have your own pro mindset. Okay, I want to welcome today Brian Folkerts. You've played in 4 different pro leagues that I'm aware of. Fair?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You signed contracts with AFL, NFL, AAF, and the last one was?
The XFL.
XFL. Okay. So in your football journey from Washburn University to the NFL, sometimes taking side journeys to these other leagues, what is the experience that you cherish the most about all those experiences?
I think my best experience was in Carolina. Made a lot of good friends there, met a lot of good dudes, and we just had fun playing ball. You know, I've been ups and downs, roller coaster career, call it what you want. And, I always like the camaraderie with the guys. That's always the fondest memories. The games, those memories come and, you got good memories of making a good play or what have you in a game. But the part you really miss is the locker room with the guys. And those are the memories I always look back on.
Well, I think one of the things that makes the sport of football special is the locker room, is the camaraderie, is the brotherhood, is the funny stories, the pranks, the, pimping guys around, treating rookies like rooks, treating old guys like old guys. When you were in Carolina, you had the nickname Caveman.
Yep.
Where did that come from? How did that develop? And how did you kind of grow with that?
Yeah, so it all started, with Jordan Gross just giving me some shit in one meetings. And he's like, what are these calls? Like, what do I make these? It's like, and I had the long hair, the long beard, and I pretty much looked like a caveman. And Gross just goofing around one day, and it just kind of stuck. And then, we had the biggest mouth on the face of the planet, and Steve Smith with our, wide receiver group. And man, he really took off running with that. Every time I'd come around, he'd be like, Caveman Center. And I just, I loved it. I was like, shoot, man, Steve Smith's talking to me now just because guys are goofing around and say I look like a caveman or whatever. It's just something I took with and ran, If you got a nickname in the locker room, you're one of the guys. We even had a Halloween party that year, and I went to the costume store and I rented a loincloth and a big old fur and a caveman club, and they had a Halloween party at the bowling alley and in the downtown Charlotte epicenter. I busted through those doors, crawling around and just goofing around, and all the guys started dying laughing, and I even won the best costume trophy for that. And we just used to goof around so much. Yeah, caveman, it just kind of stuck, but it all started with Jordan Gross and Steve Smith back in the day.
I agree with you. If you have a nickname in the locker room, you're in the club. And that was, I saw on Instagram and on social media those pictures from that party, and that was so cool. And you kind of created an identity for yourself. In addition to being a good baller, you had an identity kind of off the field with your guys. And so that's obviously very important. Let's go straight to football for a second. When I think of you, I think of 2 things. I think of a player that has a lot of passion for the game. Because if you didn't have a lot of passion for the game after you were let go by New Orleans and let go by Tampa Bay, and then you end up going to the Arena League, you wouldn't have went to the Arena League.
Right.
Most guys would have just shut it down.
Exactly. Yeah, most guys would have called it right there.
Yeah, it's give it a good try. I can always tell my kids, my grandkids, everybody, I played in the league. I did my thing. I was on 2 teams, and you're done. That's not the approach you took. You went the extra mile. You did it on your own accord. Not even with my help. I just said, hey, if you want to do it, go do it. And you went and did it, and then other doors of opportunity started to open up for you, especially in Carolina. So passion for the game is definitely something you had. And the second thing that I think that really paid dividends for you was you have to have some perseverance to sustain a career and build a career in the NFL. It's not a straight line. It's not always going up. Sometimes there's moments where you're going down. You got to be able to persevere and get off the mat and basically start over again. And you did that a bunch of times. And in the process of doing that, you now can look back and say you had a legitimate NFL career, got vested.
Yep.
And you're going to receive benefits from that in different forms for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Okay. So where does your passion for football come from?
Man, I think for me it all started somewhere along the transition from high school to college. You know, I always wanted to play in front of the big crowd. You know, that was like my whole drive to play college ball was, you know, I want to play in front of that packed stadium, Ohio State or Michigan, or, you know, I wanted to go to Mizzou, you know, growing up in St. Louis, you know, being a Missouri guy. Man, that really motivated me just to see what those college stadiums were like, and I just wanted to be a part of that. And it just kind of took off from there. You know, I kind of got a little let down coming out of high school. I didn't get any kind of opportunities from Division I or 1AA or FBS, FCS, whatever you want to call it. I got a Division II offer, and, you know, you kind of show up and you're playing in a high school style stadium again. You know, you got 3,000 to 5,000 fans a game, you know. And man, I just had a chip on my shoulder. Like I wanted to like, you know, experience what the big dogs got. You know, I wanted my piece of the pie, and, you know, I was going to do whatever it took to taste that, you know. And man, I really worked hard at Washburn, and you know, it's just kind of a good little crucible for me to really focus and not get distracted by the limelight. You know, I always kind of told myself that maybe if I would have gone to Mizzou, I probably wouldn't have made it to the NFL. I would have been happy. Everything would have been, you know, cool, just kind of chilled, coasted, and I wouldn't have made it. Because for me personally, like, I don't have the frame of a, you know, 10, 15-year offensive lineman. I was always a small guy, and I was always kind of a scrappy, you know, just kind of barely scraping by, you know, doing the dirty work kind of guy. And kind of going to Washburn was kind of what gave me that chip on my shoulder, which made me want to do that. And, man, once I got a taste of the NFL, you know, it was everything I thought it would be and more. And I just couldn't get enough. I was addicted to it. I couldn't quit it. I couldn't walk away from it. And I know I listened to a lot of motivational speakers, and Arnold Schwarzenegger's got a cool one where he talks about no stone unturned. And so I always told myself, you know, I got a taste of the NFL, and I got the boot pretty quickly. I would do everything possible, like no stone unturned, to get back. And that's why I was dipping around in the arena football leagues, and that's why I'm still messing around in the AAF and the XFL. You know, I'm going to ride this out all the way till the very end, until I either have to retire or my wife tells me it's time to come home, or, you know. But, you know, it's been a great ride. You know, football is my greatest passion in life, and I just wanted to give it everything I had. So at the end of the day, I would know, you know, I wouldn't have any regrets. That's the kind of a fear I always had was, would you regret anything? And, you know, I just wanted to eliminate all that thought so I could sleep good at night.
Well, you've also, simultaneous to building a football career, you've also built a real estate career. You and your wife are buying rentals, building a rental portfolio of homes. You're doing it back in your old college town. Share with our audience the successes and the learnings that you experienced by playing football that's helped you in your venture of real estate.
I think it's important to start with, you know, successful people. They always say, begin with the end in mind. Know where you want to get to, and take steps to get there. Otherwise, you're just kind of winging it in the dark. And even when I was playing in the NFL, I knew I was going to eventually tap into the real estate gig. I had a brother-in-law who was just getting started into it and was having some success. And I knew a couple other guys that were, some of the smarter guys on the team were like, hey, when I'm done, I'm going to get into real estate. And, guys I respected. And, those thoughts were starting to churn, midway through my career. It's like, hey, I'm starting to make some money. I could actually do something like this. As far as football goes, into transitioning into real estate, it's all the same preparation. You got to do your homework on deals, do your research on markets, make sure the math makes sense. It's just like a football week. You got to read the game plan. You got to scout the other players. There's some background work before the real work starts happening. And then we get into these houses, we fix them up and get them nice so that tenants aren't bugging us. And, they pretty much run on autopilot now. We're 12 rentals deep, and plus our house we fixed up, and we got a nice little portfolio that's given us some passive income and giving me a lot of free time to spend with my family. That's the most important thing to me, is making sure it's all passive. I want to wake up, I don't want to be on someone else's time clock in the morning, and I want to have breakfast with my family and just kind of lounge around for a little bit, and then we'll start the process over and over. We'll just find the next rental, find the next, and you just got to keep grinding and keep building, and then at the end of the day you're going to look and kind of marvel at what you got.
Well, you have a lovely daughter that's almost 2, and there's going to come a time when you're going to want to coach her in basketball or soccer or something. And you'll have the flexibility to do that with your real estate business. You've also talked about down the road looking into coaching. What interests you in the coaching arena?
I think it just stems back to my love of the game. I want to be a part of it. I want to give back. To me, the coolest thing about possibly being a college coach, that's where I want to end up, is hopefully a Division I college, but anywhere really would be all right. For me, being a kind of a long shot D2 guy, I just want to, if I could make my impact on a college player and get him to the pros, like that would be things coming full circle for me, to get me as a long shot into the NFL, and then me to be able to repay that to someone else would just be awesome. And, I've got the brain power to do it. I can teach these guys all the techniques. I've had some of the best O-line coaches in the NFL teach me and really coach me hard. The physical side of things guys can find for themselves, the weight room habits. I just think I could be a big impact for somebody, and maybe take somebody that wouldn't get to the pros and maybe elevate him and, kind of put my stamp out there. That's kind of what I want to get into and make an impact that way.
So when you look back on the career you've had, and you look at the players that have been uber successful, guys that did what you did, which is beat the odds, or become starters that maybe weren't projected to be starters, or all pros that nobody expected to do that, and compare that to the group of players that came in, maybe the team rolled out the red carpet, maybe they came from a big school like Alabama or some Power 5 school, and they didn't do it. They gave them the job, and a year later they're replacing them. When you look at those two groups of guys, what is the defining characteristics of the ones that are successful compared to the ones that aren't?
Man, just when you're just saying that, I was thinking of this guy named Andrew Norwell. He was Ohio State, undrafted to Carolina in the 2014 year, my second year there. And I remember in training camp, Matsko was dogging him in meetings, and he always kind of ripped into us a little bit. And I remember one day he asked him, he's like, "So what are you going to be after you get cut here?" And he said, "Coach, I don't have any backup plan. Like, this is it." And he was kind of a quiet guy, a real tough guy, and, absolutely no ego, maybe a little bit of a crazy side to him on the field. But man, that guy was willing to work. And he went from being someone that, was rolling with the threes in training camp, and everyone's like, yeah, he's for sure going to be cut. You kind of play that game in your head. He's on the cut list. To fast forward 2 years later, I think, and he's a Pro Bowler. And then he's signing, I think, one of the highest guard contracts that there'd been in a while with the Jaguars.
Got paid big time.
And, man, his mentality is something that just a lot of guys don't have. You know, it's something that I had, but maybe I didn't have the same physical tools as he had. But it's like, man, guys that are willing to work, willing to check their ego at the door, and just willing to commit. You know, a lot of guys, especially nowadays, you see players all the time that want things handed to them, and, you know, that's just not the reality of the NFL. If you get that guy on your field, like, you can't trust him, you know. He's not putting in the time behind the scenes. You know, he's just showing up on Sundays, doesn't know the game plan. He's just going to go clock in and clock out, and you can't trust guys like that. And when they start messing up, that's why you see coaches pull them and replace them with guys that do know what they're doing, that try hard. And, you know, I always think that's the biggest difference is it's all between the ears, really. You know, it's not really the physical nature of somebody, but it's all about their attitude, their mental focus, and their grit, honestly. That's the biggest difference.
Andrew Norwell is one of many guys that have performed above their draft status, performed perhaps above their opportunity, performed above their God-given abilities. You did that too. Why do you think guys do that? I mean, we acknowledge that they do it. There's guys that do it all the time. But if you could get inside of his mind, get inside of his heart, and guess, why does a guy like that who goes from being undrafted, there's 256 picks almost every single year, nobody took him. Every team theoretically had 8 times they could have taken him, and no one took him. And yet the son of a gun's going to a Pro Bowl a couple years later. My question to you is, and I know you don't know, but I know you can guess. You can give me an educated guess. Why in the heck does that happen? How does it happen?
Man, I think you got to find the players with a chip on their shoulder. Find somebody with something to prove. Sign somebody who's been wronged or, you know, viewed as less desirable than they thought in their head. And those are the guys that's the guys I'd want to go to war with. I don't want the entitled guy from Alabama. I don't want the guy that's been handed everything at Clemson. Man, I want the guys that are scrappy and they're kind of tough, you know, not so clean around the edges guy. Those are the kind of guys that really lock in. And I think if you have something to prove to yourself, those are the guys that go farther than the guys that, you know, have been told they're the greatest. You know, you see that all the time. Those guys wash out, you know, say biggest draft bust. You know, there's a whole list of them you can read off, and guarantee you those guys have been handed everything every step of the way.
Well, you mentioned another guy already, Stephen Smith. At first, he was Stephen Smith. Now he's Stephen Smith Sr. He must have had a Stephen Smith Jr. That dude was a 4th rounder out of Utah State. He was too short, too slow. And he built an unbelievable career with Carolina and with Baltimore. What can you say about a guy like him who beat the odds?
Yes, you know, more of the same. He's out to prove something. You know, he had a big ego and a big mouth, and you know, he was out to prove it and to make you know that he proved it every time. And like you said, he's short. You know, I can't say exactly how tall he is, maybe 5'10" or so. Maybe he wasn't the speed demon running the long routes, but man, that dude was tough. That dude would best blocking receiver, or he'd come in on a crack block and just absolutely destroy somebody and make like our team highlight pump up tape for the next week. I mean, the whole city of Carolina had a shirt that said "Ice Up, Son." After he like destroyed, like he de-cleated somebody in a game, and he was a trash talker, and that's what he said. He said, "Ice up, son," and the whole city got behind it, and there was T-shirts everywhere, and you know, he's a tough dude that was out to prove something, and he wanted to prove that he was better than everyone he lined up against, and usually he was, but not always. I just love playing with him. Total character, you know, on the field, get you laughing. But then when it's time to do business, he's ready to do the dirty work.
Okay, so you eyes up. That's what he said. Eyes up, son.
Ice up.
Ice up.
Like a bag of ice.
Oh, ice up.
Yeah.
Shit.
Like I blasted you, and I go put some ice on that because you're hurt.
I got it. Okay, my bad. I got it. Okay, so you played for several offensive line coaches. We've talked about John Matsko a few times. Who's the coach? And it may be John, it may be somebody else. Who's the offensive line coach in the NFL that's had the biggest impact on your career, challenged you the most, made you better the most, perhaps made you doubt yourself the most, just all out challenged you to grow and get better?
Yeah, I always go back to it and go back to this coach. He's my favorite coach of all time. He did exactly what you said. He challenged me. He'd try to break you down. He'll make you mentally tough. He'd be the toughest guy out there after you play with it for this guy. But it was John Matsko. He demanded perfection, and he was going to let you hear it if you didn't put that out there. He wasn't the type of guy to let things go, too. Just one time in meetings, I didn't know who Jim Johnson was. That's the last time I'll ever not know who a famous D coordinator and blitz guru was. And, man, he let me have that for about a month. And he would just pause the tape and start chewing me out in the middle of just kind of a no reason kind of chew out. That's kind of how life goes. Sometimes you'll be cruising along and, out of the blue, something goes bad. And it kind of looking back on it, maybe that's what he's getting me ready for, and you're in the game, everything's going cool, and, some bad stuff's about to happen. He got us ready, mentally, physically, with all the techniques. And, man, he was a tough coach to play for. But at the end of my career, he's the one I respected the most because I had to grow. I had to grow to survive in his coaching. So, yeah, definitely John Matsko is definitely the coach that challenged me the most and, made me rise up to the level I needed to be at.
Okay, Brian, what I would like for you to do is kind of share what the NFL experience has done for you within your family, your circle of friends, your former teammates, your in-laws, business opportunities that you might have in real estate. When they find out that you played in the NFL, does it help you? Does it hurt you? Do they believe you? Do they even know? So what I'm looking for is, what is the residual benefit in your career in real estate? How is it impacted by your NFL career, and how is your family and relationships impacted?
Yeah, so just with the options you gave me, all the above. Family, friends, personal life, way up. The NFL, people hear that and they automatically like, oh, this is my favorite team, talk football and everything's great. And you got instant buddies, anywhere you want to go, just start talking to somebody and, you're one of the guys in the room telling stories now. And but in my business side of things and my real estate side of my life, I try to keep that the biggest secret in the world. And people are like, hey, you're a big guy. Did you play football? I'm like, oh, yeah, I played at, Division II Washburn. Like, I'll just leave it at that unless they already know and they bring it up.
Why is that?
I think it puts me at risk, honestly. Risk for any lawsuits that might happen or guys wanting to charge me more just because I got a NFL tag on me. They might try to charge me double, thinking I don't know the real value of anything. And, so I always try to keep that secret. I don't want my tenants knowing that I played in the NFL. And, I don't know who would do it, but I'm sure somebody would be out there to, try to get hurt on my property or something. And say, hey, he's got a lot of money. He might try to brush it under the table with some hush money or, instead of going through a big lawsuit, So it definitely puts you at risk with contractors, with tenants. So I always keep that like super secret. And usually my wife deals with the tenants and it's not me for that same exact reason. Now, granted, it can't always avoid it because we like to rent to college students, and we both played at the college town we rent in. So, if I get football players, like they're probably going to know that I was one of the 5 guys that ever made it to the NFL from our school. But usually that comes with its own level of trust with coaches and me being present at Washburn still and, kind of helping out with the program here and there. But yeah, it definitely helps and hurts. That's the residual effect from it. You kind of get it on all sides. You kind of got to guard yourself a little bit. And then, sometimes you'll go out and my father-in-law or brother-in-law or somebody who, they'll start saying, oh yeah, and there's my brother. He played in the NFL, or like they kind of use you as a pedestal to kind of boost themselves. And it always kind of puts you in an awkward situation. Cause then now it's like, you're the guy that's trying to tell everybody and that's not me. And, I think if it comes up naturally, great. But if not, I'll just kind of lay low and, kind of just do me. And, so kind of get on all spectrums.
Sounds like to me that your experience and your history as an NFL player is something that you don't broadcast. You have to be careful where you use it. And in a lot of cases, you don't want to use it because it can work against you.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's pretty much me. I'm like trying to lay low under the radar, and I'm not trying to be the guy with the biggest ego and play the measuring stick game in a room. And, in the business side of things, that's definitely the case. That's pretty much how it is.
Okay,
life
so
after football.
Let's talk about the NFL. Let's talk about your career. And in your career, what is the biggest mistake that you made that you could actually control? It was your mistake. And then how did you recover from that mistake?
From playing center, the biggest mistakes that happen are bad snaps. That's an instant gut-wrenching feeling on the field because you know how a normal snap should feel, and the ball was wet and slipped, and then the crowd noise goes up, and it's an instant can't really describe. It's like a jolt to your whole body, and something really bad just happened. But I think overcoming something like that, hopefully you guys still got the ball and you got another play after that, or at least you got the next drive. You just cannot ride the emotional roller coaster of football. Terrible play, great play. You can't go up or down. You got to stay level-headed in the middle because that's going to put you in the best mental state to make the best calls, to do your technique. Because when guys get so amped up, coaches always say, watching film, the first drive, you're excited and firing out too hard, and you kind of get a hall pass from coaches just understanding your mental state, being hyped up for a big game or something. You kind of get a little bit of a break from the first drive, and then after that, you're expected to be, golden the rest of the game. But yeah, if you can avoid those ups and downs, especially the downs too, you have that, like I was saying, you have that bad snap. It's real easy to get into a funk the rest of the game. And then you start stacking bad plays, and now you're replaying them in your head on the sideline. And now your next series, you're going out there man, they should have subbed me out. I'm going to mess this up. Get me I got to do something. And now you're trying to go too hard, and now you're messing up again, and it's kind of just spirals out of control. But yeah, it's super important. Stay level-headed. Stay focused. They always said one snap, a race. That's the best way to go about it in the NFL, and probably with any kind of pro-level, mindset is good or bad. Okay, it happened. Now let's move on. Let's get the best product we can moving forward from here.
Okay, so correspondingly, what's the biggest mistake? And I'm not trying to be negative. I just love learning because everybody that plays football, that plays center, makes a bad snap from time to time. It's inevitable. What has been your biggest mistake in business or in real estate, and how did you recover from that?
That's a good question. Currently, we're dealing with COVID in the world today, and evictions aren't exactly moving forward. But man, there was a house that we tried to press for top dollar for what we thought, and all right, the best way to do that is to go for college students, because then they're dividing the rent by 4 or 5, and it's only $250 or $300 a person. Anyways, we had a house sitting on the market for 3 or 4 weeks, and we're like, man, we just got to get somebody in. And we had this group of college guys. 2 of them were in college. 2 of them were just kind of post high school, kind of just messing around town kind of guys. And we're like, oh, great, we got finally somebody that, put an application through. Let's get these guys in here. Let's get them started as soon as possible. But man, like ever since the very beginning, big parties, lots of damage. They even like collapsed the floor one time and, didn't bother to tell us for like a week. And, the house is just getting put through the ringer right now. Luckily they're in their last month, so they're still not out of the water. But yeah, COVID struck, and, these guys, man, they like started taking advantage of us and only paying half the rent, and kind of like a mentality of, oh, we don't have to pay you because of COVID. And so it's been like...
So what do you do in that situation? Are you going to keep their security deposit? I mean, what do you do?
Oh, yeah, their security deposit. There's no way they're getting any of that back. They're behind it over a full month, and they've caused enough damage where it wouldn't even matter. But man, I've talked to several lawyers, and they say, yeah, even if the courts were open, they'd be so backed up that you wouldn't get in for 2 more months. And by that time that would put us beyond their lease. And so we're kind of in damage control mode with these guys. But anyways, the lesson to be learned there is, don't compromise your standards for what you want right now. We wanted the big ticket dollar, the big rent roll each month. We wanted to be clearing like over 2% a month and, be balling, but we're like, these guys seem kind of sketchy, but, we'll overlook that. No big deal. Show me the money, and man, we're really paying for it now. But yeah, don't compromise your morals, and set your standards and stick to them.
So what is different? So kind of share like the goals for somebody out there that's thinking about doing rentals. What you want to focus on when you're doing your first one compared to now you're you're on a dozen. What's different down the road?
I think for us personally, we started off buying a house for ourselves. We moved back from LA to Topeka, Kansas, and we had to have somewhere to live. And we knew we wanted to get into real estate, but we also, we're like, all right, we need a home base, so let's start with that. And so we bought a house, a little bit of a fixer-upper. Basically, our standard was, let's get this house to where we're comfortable living in it. You see a lot of rentals that are like, oh, man, like I would never live there. Or, like who's managing that? So we wanted to get all our houses, well, our first house, we wanted to get it to a spot where we ourselves would be comfortable living in it. And then what we did was we bought our next house, a different one for us to live in, and then we rented out that first one. So we kind of had lived in our first one for almost a year, and then we moved, and then we said, hey, instead of selling our house, why don't we just rent it out? And so that had kind of become the standard of how nice do we fix houses up, or, where do you put the money? Do you go, you don't have to do granite countertops. You don't have to do like brand new hardwood installs. And, we were kind of a good enough mentality, where it's quality, but it's not like not going to impress somebody, which is like exactly what rental quality is. We just kind of actually leapfrogged from house to house. We've lived in 3 of our rentals out of our 12, so a fourth of them we've lived in them personally, and we've fixed them up to where we needed to be comfortable. And I always tell Lindsay, I said, man, we can't show this house, like it looks terrible, like I can't show it right now. I gotta do this and this. And that's kind of our standard with how nice do we fix them up, is would I be embarrassed to show it? And so we've kind of snowballed there. You start off with a few projects here and there. You're hiring out, tradesmen, electricians, plumbers, and now I'm to a point where I'm 12 deep, and I've picked up a lot of tools along the way. I kind of shadowed some of the guys that I've hired in the past, and now I'm doing bathtub surrounds, hardwood floor refinishes. We're painting. We're doing all the cosmetic side of things, and then we only hire out the meat and potatoes of the house, like the foundations or electrical, plumbing. That's the only thing we pretty much hire out now. But yeah, you really learn along the way what you got to do and what you could maybe let slide. But I think the biggest thing about it is just starting. I know people that, you talk about like analysis paralysis, they think they got to know every single possibility before they get their foot in the door. And those are the kind of people that just let good deal after good deal slip under their fingers. They could have been 3 or 4 houses deep by the time they finally bought their first one, only because they're like looking for the perfect storm, like the best possible situation.
Trying to hit a grand slam from the beginning instead of hitting singles.
Exactly. And that's the name of the game. It's, it's small ball. You just got to make good, solid moves. Like, they don't have to be the best move you ever heard of, but say, hey, is this move going to make us money each month? Or are we going to be in the green here? If it's a yes, you got to go for it. And that's the only way to like start building your portfolio, is to start somewhere. So that's kind of been our, that's kind of what I tell people that talk about getting into it. It's like, man, you just got to start. Get on YouTube, watch a few videos, see if you're comfortable trying something. If not, hire it out. It'll make itself back and rent roll in a couple months, month or 2 months, and hop on Zillow, figure out what houses in that area are renting for, see what's currently available, how long it's been available. You see houses that are trying to rent for $2,000 a month, and you look at them and say it's been on the market for 3 months. Like, no one's touching that, so ignore that. Or you see the one that's been on the market for a day and has something pending on it, and you say, okay, well, that's the hot zone, and then that's the cold zone, so maybe we're somewhere in the middle. And you kind of make it up as you go, honestly. And then you start to hone in and figure out what makes things tick along the way, and you kind of learn it from experience instead of from a book before you start. And I think that's been our biggest asset for us, is just getting going. And otherwise, we've been sitting here with just living in our old house that we used to have and just looking for that perfect rental.
I think what you described as far as like your business philosophy stems a lot from football. If you have to know everything, be perfect, know every call, know every angle, every technique before you go play, you would never get on the field. There's a time when you just got to go play, learn on the go, win ugly, make the block, and it may look like crap. But you got it done. You broke your RB for a touchdown. But you look like the clumsiest, awkward guy ever. Who cares? So I think that one of the things I've noticed with performance is that some guys want to perfect practice and do it perfect in the game, when what coaches want you to do once you get to the game is throw out the textbook, throw out the playbook. Just get the freaking job done.
Exactly. That's exactly how it is in the NFL. They'll coach technique till the cows come home, but on game day, if you get your job done, you're going to be starting next week too. And same in the real estate side. You can analyze every deal, and you just got to jump in eventually and just get into it. Who cares if it's ugly? You got to get started somewhere.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, I appreciate the convo today. Don't know what your future holds. The NFL right now is crazy with COVID. No minicamp, no OTAs, no tryouts. None of that stuff's going on. We didn't talk about the fact that you were in the XFL, and in the middle of your training camp season, was it week 3, week 4?
I think we're week 5.
Week 5? They shut it down. So, that shows you how crazy this thing is. But I do think that your experience as an NFL guy is helping you be crazy successful in real estate, because you're taking a lot of the same principles that enabled you to get to the NFL and applying them to business.
Exactly. I totally agree. It's the same mentality. It's just get to work and get after it. Be persistent, Yep.
Well, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you, Craig.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Pro Mindset. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. You can follow us on our website, promindsetpodcast.com, or on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Pro Mindset Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you the next time.